All right, guys, it's about that time. It is 1 p.m. Pacific time, as I promised to continue on with part 2. And we're going to get started here very, very shortly, just waiting for some folks to join us in the chat room. And hopefully we'll have a good turnout like we did yesterday, and I hope to be able to complete the build today. What we've got left here is mostly wiring at this point, and that's everybody's favorite. So let's give everybody a few minutes. I will start getting ready here myself, and then we'll continue the build here shortly. So for everybody joining us, welcome into the live stream. Welcome to the chat. And I will, I think I'm going to end up putting part 1 and part 2 together into one main video at some point in the future. I was debating whether or not to wear the same shirt I wore yesterday to keep that continuity, but I decided against it. This is a 2-day build, basically. I started late in the day yesterday, ran out of sunlight, and so as you can see, my light is back, so we can get filmed here shortly. Just waiting for a few more people to join us, and waiting for people to join us here in the chat. And for everybody who's joining us, hello. Who we have in there? We've got Matt, Andrew, Steve, and Tom, Sheik, Romanian Gamer, Fritz, Johan, John, Gary, Swatank in France is watching us. I'll tell you what, you guys in the chat, tell us where you're watching from. So right now I just see France, I see Durham, UK. I have to wait, there's a delay. Another one from the UK. Miami, Texas, Colombia, Britain, New York, England, Florida. Oh, you guys are going too fast. New York, Canada, Portugal, Virginia, Kosovo. Really, Kosovo? Oh my gosh, guys, you're killing me now. Careful what you ask for. Oh my gosh. Germany, Belgium, Latvia, Illinois. Not Illinois. There's no noise in Illinois. Just had an excuse to say that. Texas, Australia, Italy, Uruguay, Norway, Jordan, South Australia, Rochester, New York, Netherlands, Scotland, South Africa, Dubai, Greece, Germany, Holland, UK, Scotland, another in Canada, north of Sweden, Davenport, Louisiana, the Caribbean. Well, that's a big place. Which island in the Caribbean? West Virginia, Slovakia, Turkey, Belgium, Michigan, Stamford, Connecticut. Another one from the UK, Atlanta, Austria, Virginia. Detroit, my hometown. New York, Spain, New Zealand, Sweden, India, Missouri, West Indies. Okay, very cool. That was the British West Indies in the Caribbean. I went to Anguilla. There's a beautiful little tiny island. Denmark, Charlotte, North Carolina, Canada, Arizona, Gilbert, Arizona, Turkey. You guys be careful out there in Turkey. Slovakia, Slovenia, Manchester, that's UK, Austria, Romania, St. Lucia, oh, that must be the island. Mexico City. Can I practice my Spanish? Hola, me llamo Carey, mucho gusto. ¿Cómo está? What else do I know? ¿Dónde está el baño? You got to know that. I mean, if you're going to be anywhere where people speak Spanish, the very least thing you need to know is ¿Dónde está el baño? Where is the bathroom? Trust me on that one. Okay, we're going to get started here real soon. Ireland, Boston, Corona, California, Spokane Valley in Washington, Canal, Winchester, Ohio, Bosnia, and I don't even know, what is this? Herzegovina? Okay, showing my American intelligence, my American geography intelligence. The Ukraine, Northern Ireland, San Juan, Puerto Rico, I've been there. Donde está? Sorry. Muy bueno, ¿y tú? You're going to test my Spanish, so you said very good, and you. I wouldn't know what to say except the same thing back. Muy bueno. Gracias. Let's see, Anchorage, Alaska. I'm sure this is exciting for you guys. Alabama, Leeds in the UK, Alberta, Canada. Carey, I missed day one build. Are you building this PC for someone in particular, or is it for you? No, the PC I'm building for me will be the Xenos build, which is coming up very, very soon. This is a PC going out to a customer of Mike Smith. You guys should be familiar with Mike Smith of the Mike Tech Show. He's out in Philadelphia. We do the Tech Vets podcast together. And Mike was trying to help this customer build a custom system. Ideally, he would have it built there locally, so if they had any reasons for support. So they went to a place called Micro Center, which is a retail, a franchise retail center, I guess. We don't have them here in Arizona, but Micro Center is pretty popular around the United States, generally speaking. And Mike got very upset because it seemed that, in his words, they pulled a bait and switch on him. They wanted certain parts. They said, no, you want these instead. And then they were just adding unnecessary things and more complication and more price, and then they wanted money before they even got started. And Mike got a really bad feeling about it. They ended up with something completely different than what they initially ordered. And initially, he was okay with it. And then I guess they called the customer and said, your video cards come in, we need you to come in and sign some paperwork before we can start the build. The customer calls Mike and says, what's all that about? And Mike says, I don't know, we've already paid for this. Go in there, get a refund. I'm going to call Carey. And then Mike said, I should have called Carey right from the get-go, because the systems Mike uses to do his podcasts were built by me. He's never had any problems with them. And I'm really flattered by that. And so the last thing I want to do is let Mike down. Of course, I don't want to let the customer down either, but it's very important. It's a new customer. You want to make a good first impression. And then with an existing relationship, such as what I have with Mike, I need him to have confidence in me to know that, well, it's not ideal to ship this computer 2,000 miles. Once it is shipped and once it arrives, and everything we've shipped to Philadelphia so far, I've shipped 4 or 5 computers to Philadelphia. Every one of them has arrived perfectly fine. I hope I haven't just jinxed myself, but I think it's bad luck to be superstitious, so think about that one. But anyway, this is all the systems you see me build are for customers. All the systems you see me repair are for customers. I'm not a tech enthusiast. I'm not one of those other guys with a YouTube channel who just likes tech. I'm a working computer technician. I'm opening my doors, turning on the camera and letting you see the real work that a real technician does. And the reason I differentiate that is because a real technician has to be held accountable and liable for everything that he or she does. And these enthusiasts on YouTube, they can say and do whatever they want. They can't really evaluate much in the way of having a part for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they recommend it or don't recommend it. That's not how the real world works. So I'll give you an example. I did a build with the Intel NUC, the NUC. And if you look at that video, you'll see I did a follow-up review 2 years later. And yesterday marks the 4th year anniversary of that video. I think I published it on April 20th of 2013, or was it 2012? And because I've been so busy, I haven't had time to update it. But that's what I'm doing, is I'm going back to earlier reviews and saying, here's how the machine's holding up over time. And as far as that Intel NUC goes, it's no different. It's still running perfectly fine today. We've never even had to reinstall the OS on it. It's never given us a lick of problems. It's been a very solid, reliable machine. Now that may not help you to go and say, Well, great, they don't make that model anymore, but Intel still makes the NUC, and if they're making it with the same quality, that's a good sign that we haven't had any problems to be able to then say, okay, I can recommend this manufacturer. And remember, it's not always about whether or not you have a problem with a product, because sooner or later somebody's going to have a problem with any product regardless of how good the reviews are. So what it comes down to is, if you have the problem, how responsive is the manufacturer in getting you the support you need and getting you a solution quickly without stress or headaches or rigmarole and nonsense and red tape. And ultimately, that's the most important thing. If I have a system that has a problem, it's not a big deal, it happens, but it is a big deal if the manufacturer won't stand behind their product, and what gives me, the customer, a hard time suggesting that we caused the problem or trying to point blame away from themselves. And that's why you'll see me use certain manufacturers. If you don't see me use certain manufacturers like, MSI and ASRock, that means I've had a very bad experience with them running a business where they don't support their product. And that ended up costing my business money and almost put me out of business. So rather than talk poorly about those companies, I simply don't use their products. If you use the manufacturers that I use, not necessarily the exact products, but the manufacturers, you may find they cost maybe a couple of dollars more. They're not, extraordinarily expensive. They're typically not the cheapest you can buy, but they're not the most expensive. And you will be less likely to have a problem. And if you do have a problem, they will take care of you. Like take EVGA, for example, or Corsair. Both of those companies have stood behind all the products 100%, with one exception, my Corsair keyboard. Corsair shouldn't be making keyboards. That is one thing I can't recommend. So there are exceptions, and basically I had updated the firmware on the keyboard to solve a problem. The firmware bricked it. Corsair said, if you're out of warranty, we can't help you. And I said, no, it's fine, I'll pay for it. It's a $150 keyboard. I'll pay for the repair. It just needs a new BIOS chip. And they said, no, we don't make keyboards. They have them built at a factory. They build so many. They have a certain amount that are sent back for RMAs and things like that. They don't actually repair anything. It just gets chucked and a new one gets sent out. And after the warranty period, there's no more support. A lot of router companies do the same thing. I don't believe Asus or Linksys or Belkin, I don't believe any of them actually make the product or repair the product. They engineer it, design it, and then they they bid it out to factories for the lowest bid for a certain number of units. And when you send a unit in for an RMA, generally you get a new one back. And then sometimes companies will then sell those units to a third-party company to refurbish them. And then that's where you'll see refurbished units. But I digress. How are we doing in the chat? Oh, we got people here. I got to get started. Sorry. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sound like John Oliver. All right. What we got going on in the chat? If you see me leading in like this, it's because I'm looking at the chat screen. Can I ship to the UK? Let me cover this real quick. One of the most common questions I get is, can you build a computer for me? If you live within the United States, yes. What happens when you ship a computer outside of the United States, first of all, is it's got to get on a boat. And it's going to rock back and forth on this boat. That's after it has already crossed the surface of the United States. Well, depending if it left California or New York, depending on where it's going. So the system has a much greater chance of arriving damaged. When the computer you order arrives in your country's government charges, most likely, an import tax. Now that import tax is something I have no control over. So now you've paid for the parts, you've paid for the labor, you've paid for the shipping, you have to wait all this time for the computer to, from a slow boat to get over, it gets to go through customs, whatever wait time that is in your country, and then your government will put a tax on it based on its value. Places like Brazil, it's a 50% import tax. So if this is a $3,000 computer, you will get a notice from your postal service saying, we have a package for you at customs and you have to pay us $1,500 to release that package. That's the import tax. Then customers get mad at me. But here's the worst case scenario. Let's say you live in Brazil and you pay the $1,500 and you get this computer and the inside of it's all damaged. I can't help you anymore. for you to send that system back now is going to be a couple of $100. And the manufacturers are going to say this isn't a defect in workmanship or materials. These parts have been clearly damaged purposely or by a person. You know, they weren't damaged in the factory. The Postal Service will say, you didn't pack it good enough. That's their excuse. Unless there's a hole in the package, like they drove a forklift through it, or there's physical damage to the box, the Postal Service will say, insurance won't cover it, you didn't pack it good enough. So there's a lot of mess that comes into shipping internationally. Not to mention that shipping to the Middle East may be violating laws here in the United States. There are certain countries you're not allowed to send technology to. Even Microsoft's end user license agreement in Windows restricts certain countries' versions to those specific countries. And we run into all these complications, but the most important one is the warranty and the support. A lot of people in other countries think they're going to get it cheaper by buying it from me. They don't realize that when it gets shipped into your country, you have that import tax, which would ultimately make it cheaper for you to just buy the thing in your country, which is why your government does that. I have a friend who lives in Brazil, and whenever she comes to visit, she buys a laptop here, and then she takes it as a carry-on when she flies back. And that way, they never know that she didn't leave with it, right? But she can't bring back 3 and 4 laptops. It's got to be pretty clear that, you know, that it was something she traveled with the whole time. And, you know, that's obviously you're not going to make a special trip just for that. It's something you do while you're here. So anyway, that's why there are the restrictions with regards to why I don't ship. It's primarily a concern about damage. These things, as much caution as I take to ship them, the furthest I've ever shipped was Bermuda. And Bermuda is about 300 miles off the coast of North Carolina. And it arrived fine without a problem. But I actually didn't ship it to Bermuda. What I did is I shipped it to a facility in New Jersey, and the customer who lives in Bermuda made arrangements with that corporation. I guess this company in New Jersey ships things specifically to Bermuda. That's their business model. Now, if somebody wants to do that, if you have somebody here in the US I can send it to, and then they want to forward it on to you, that's your business. But I have to warn you, I don't think it's a smart thing to do. Again, the more it gets shipped, the more likely there is for damage. And Bermuda's not that far away when you consider you know, shipping to like England or shipping to Australia. Australia's import tax isn't bad. England's can be pretty expensive. Brazil's is one of the worst. So anyway, that's why I keep it within the US. It's really mainly for support reasons. So hope that answers that. But, you know, the whole point of these videos isn't for me to sell computers. The whole point of this is to show you how you can build one yourself. It's very easy, it's fun, and the sense of accomplishment you get is, there's no words to describe it. So unless you want to fly me out to your country and put me up at your place, then I can build it for you. You let me know. All right. I need to get my assistant some water, and then we're going to get started here. So come on into the chat if you haven't. I'll be right back here. Okay. All right, they got water now. All right, can we start, or you guys still want to ask me questions? Okay, I think we're good to start. Very good. All right, I will tell you that I did look back at the manual over the memory location because that was really bothering me. And that's actually where the memory is supposed to go. Remember I said it was really confusing, at least it is to me, that Asus labels their memory as A1, B1, A2, B2. Sounds a lot like R2D2. Basically, and here's the thing that really throws me. They want you to use A2 and B2 first. And I don't understand why you wouldn't use 1 and 2 first. You know, A1 and A2, or B1 and B2, or you wouldn't use A1 and B1. No, it's the exact opposite of every possibility I said in the first video, which is A2 and B2. No other manufacturer does this. For example, Gigabyte will say the first slot is 1, the second slot is 3, the third slot is 2, and the fourth slot is 4. And they tell you to use 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 in that order. So if you have 1 module, you put it in socket 1. If you have 2, you put it in sockets 1 and 2. And if you have 4, you put it in sockets 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's pretty straightforward and simple. What Asus does is they have this engineer mentality that says, well, channel A is a different channel than channel B. No, that's not right either. Because they want you to install it in A2 and B2, which is actually where I move the RAM to. And I'll tell you why I think they do that. I think they do that because of the heat that's generated in this area. They want to move the RAM away from the heat in order to give you a more stable or higher overclock. I don't believe it actually does anything for performance other than perhaps you can get a higher overclock. I doubt it. But I believe that that's the type of logic that Asus uses. I really believe that their engineers are completely disconnected from regular society, and that they justify their behavior because many of their, I won't say many, there's a percentage of their customers that hang out in the forums that are equally have that engineer mindset, and they just feed off each other. So when you come at them being a normal consumer and you say you guys should address this, they go, oh, no, people aren't complaining, people like that. Yeah, the people who join the forums, your average customer who builds a computer normally doesn't go to an Asus forum ever in their life. So it's not to downplay their parts. I like Asus parts. I just don't get that. I don't get it. It's like they built it by engineers for engineers rather than for regular people. And again, the excuse I get is, well, people who buy this kind of a high-end board are generally people who are engineering types and understand that kind of language. But they don't understand that that feeds off of it, right? It's a sick justification in my mind that you sort of prophesize it and justify it rather than taking the feedback and saying, obviously, if a simpleton can understand it, someone with an engineering mindset shouldn't have a problem. That would make more sense to me than saying, well, the engineers get it, and if you don't get it, well, you probably wouldn't buy that board. That's preposterous. All right, get off my soapbox. Anyway, so the RAM is actually in the place it's supposed to be. That's where it should have gone to begin with. I want to make that very clear. I messed up by putting it into the other slots, which ended up forcing me to move them over anyway because of the concerns I had. So let's get back to building. Now, the next thing I can do here, I'm just kind of looking at what we got going on. I believe we can start doing the cabling, right? Because we've got all the parts but the video card installed. I was looking also at the M.2 drives, right? If you remember in part 1, I was like, that's weird that the M.2 drive just sticks straight in like that. And I did look at the manual, and the manual doesn't say anything about that bracket. But there are some YouTube videos that show that little metal bracket that I thought was for the Wi-Fi is actually a support for the M.2 drive to stick vertically into that socket. I think that's a horrible, horrible idea. I guess they do it to get it away from the heat, but it also makes it very easy to break off, even with that support bracket. And that M.2 drive is NVMe only, and the one I used is NVMe or SATA. So if you don't know the difference, I've got a video that explains the difference between, I call it M.2 and NVMe, but they're both technically M.2. What ends up happening is if I were to put a SATA-based M.2 into the area here, it would disable SATA port 1 over here. But because we put an NVMe drive here, SATA port 1, none of the SATA ports are disabled. So just keep that in mind if you're building one yourself. Ordinarily, if I wasn't shipping this, I would prefer to put the NVMe drive into the socket that is NVMe only, so that the customer then has the option of putting a SATA drive, M.2 SATA, into the other socket. But I don't want to ship it that way. I really think it's a fragile design, and I don't believe it would do well in shipping. And it's easy enough for the customer to change that later if they really want to. It doesn't really make much sense to me to put an M.2 SATA drive in a system this high-end anyway, because it's going to slow the whole system down anytime you access it. Not that that mechanical drive isn't, but anyway, those are my thoughts on that, and just some of the research that I did last night after I ended the stream, just to make sure that I knew somewhat what I was talking about today when I went live. James says he's been watching me since 2014. Me and my mates watch you from across the pond in London. Well, cheers, James. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Keep watching. Hopefully you'll say that in 2024. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull our front port umbilicals out. Get those out of the way. And I don't think I'm going to hook those up just yet. Oh, the whole grommet came off. That's all right. That just goes right in here, like so. The other thing I learned about this board is it has a USB 3.1 connector, which is a bit unique, and I haven't seen a USB 3.1 plug yet, but that's what this is right here, this really weird looking metal plug. It's a lot smaller than the USB 3.0, which is a welcome change because of all the leverage that that large 3.0 connector has. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you will when we get to it. And again, I think Asus maybe sells a hardware add-on option that you can buy to plug that in and put it into your front ports. The motherboard didn't come with it, and I thought that was pretty interesting. And then these fan controls up here, up by the CPU, which I was afraid was going to be a tight fit. We're not actually going to use any of those. We're going to use the all-in-one. There's an all-in-one header here for an all-in-one liquid cooler, and that's designated to not be controlled by the BIOS. In other words, it's full power all the time, and that's the way you want your water pump to run. You want it full. The water pump doesn't slow down or speed up. It runs at one speed. And then the big debate is whether or not we have the fans connected to the water block and let the NZXT software control them. Or if you listen to Asus, Asus says you should plug the fans into the motherboard because the motherboard's much more intelligent with regards to temperature sensing and can control those fans more accurately. However, you're going to run the NZXT cam software in order to control the lights and everything. It makes sense to be able to control your fans if you want it in quiet mode, performance mode. There's no wrong way for you to do this. It's really up to you to decide. And you can experiment with it if you want to and see which one you prefer. You can run Asus's fan monitoring controls to control your fans, or the NZXT cam software. But like I said, if you're going to control the color of the light, or like this is going to have a black and red color scheme, we want that to be red. If it's blue or any other color, it's not going to look right. And to do that, we need to load the cam software. And if we're going to load the cam software, it makes sense to also utilize the fans. That's my logic in it. Utilize the fans through the cam software. And anyway, I've been going now for 30 minutes and haven't actually done anything. So how about I get started? All right, I guess I'm going to start with hooking up power to the motherboard. So we're going to need the CPU power cable. That was right on top. And the big 24-pin connector, the biggest one you got. Right there. A lot of people ask me about doing a video on cable management, but it's practically impossible because cable management is something that is sort of unique to the hardware you have and what you personally like as far as what you think looks good and not what you think doesn't look good. And so the best thing you can do is just experiment with your cabling and take your time and enjoy it and find different ways of routing your cables that looks best to you. There's no rhyme or reason to it other than aesthetics. Unless you're building exactly precisely what I'm building, the same case with the same power supply, so you have the same length of cables and the same routing grommets, there's no way for me to say this is how it's always done. Every case is different, and I just do it by what looks good. So if I had two identical systems, they would be managed, cable managed differently, because I would do one what looks right, and then I would do the other one that looks right. And ideally they'd be similar, but it doesn't follow any particular pattern other than what looks right. The great thing about cable management is that you can undo it and redo it as many times as you want. If you get frustrated with it, leave it be for a few days. Come back at it when you're fresh and re-energized and ready to tackle it again. And always remember, just handle one cable at a time. Just think about one cable at a time. And that's what we're going to do right now with our large motherboard connector. Come around to the front so you can see what I'm doing here. And we've got to get into the back of the power supply. And this does a bit get in our way, this drive tray. So should I be taking that out? Should I take it out? It would make my life a little easier if I took this drive tray out. There's some screws down here which I cannot access because this is in the way. Looks like they're screwed on from the bottom. Is that the case? Yeah, it looks like they're put on from the bottom. So let's take that off just to make my life a little easier. Lay this down. Yeah, it looks like we've got 4 screws that hold this part in. I also charged up my battery last night, so I got a nice freshly charged battery. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, that's interesting. So there's also a vent to put another fan. I don't know why anybody would put another fan on the bottom of their computer, because it's just a vacuum cleaner. It's bad enough we've got this one, at least that has the filter on it. But these filters will do you no good if you don't regularly take them out and clean them. In fact, people that don't clean their filters are better off not having the filters. A lot of people think, oh, all you gotta do is put a filter on there. Well, that's well and good as long as you know how to, as long as you're aware to clean that filter. A lot of people that have filters don't even know they've got them. They bring their computers into the shop and the filter's so plugged up with dust, it's no wonder why the computer's got problems. You say, hey, this is a filter here. Oh, I didn't know that. All right, there we go. There's that drive bay. Those are like fan screws. Interesting. Very coarse thread. I don't know how well you can see that. Very coarse thread screws that are typically used for fans. They're using to secure onto this hard drive bay, and then you'll see they've got 2 screws here that I was referring to that removes it from its little riser. I don't know what else you'd call that. I don't know if we're going to put that back in or not. I'll ask the customer what he wants to do, but for now, let me just set it aside. Let's get rid of that. Take your time, enjoy your build. There's no hurry. Once you build your first computer, and you can ask anybody who's ever built a computer, you will want to build another one. Ask anybody who's built a computer and they will tell you. If you say, would you want to build another one? They will all say yes, every one of them. Doesn't matter young or old, male or female. It is an experience that is, like I said earlier, it's indescribable. The language does not permit us. We don't have the words to describe that sense. The closest thing we can get to is accomplishment or fulfillment. It's just a very unique feeling that, let's put it to you this way. If you build your own computer, you know what I'm talking about, and I don't need to explain it anymore. So if you want to join the club, get to work. And they call this work. All right, so let's get our motherboard hooked up here. Back at power supply. And then we'll bring it out through here. It looks like that's going to be the closest one. And then we'll bring it up. Let's see, where? Up here? Yeah, I think that's going to be best. Up through the top. This only plugs in one way. It's a bit of a tight fit. Sorry guys, I got to turn it away from the camera for a moment so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, there we go. Now we can put on CPU power. You know, one of the most common mistakes people make when they build a computer, I think, is they're in too much of a hurry. They don't watch the video and build along with me. They think, I got this. And then they email me when they go, it's funny because they go, my system won't turn on, I did everything right. Generally speaking, if the system doesn't turn on, you didn't do everything right. But I see a lot of times people forget to put this connector on, CPU connector that goes up in this corner. I see people forget to put the power connector on the video card, or people don't hook up the power switch into the right place. Those are the three most common reasons why systems don't power on for first-time builders. Let's see, this says CPU. It says CPU on both sides. That's interesting. So I guess it doesn't matter which side goes into the power supply, but I'm going to keep the solid part here plugged into the power supply, and we have, what do we have? SATA connectors. No, don't want that. CPU 1 is what it says here on the back of the power supply. So we'll plug that in there. I hope that's going to be a long enough cable. And I guess I want to keep all these cables together. Just, it's going to look cleaner. Yeah. We're going to go up through this top corner. I like how easy that goes in. You'll see me struggle with that on the 200R. And it's going to use both of these 4-pin connectors on this motherboard. Some motherboards only need one of the 4-pin connectors. It really just depends which board you buy. You see, you each have a clip, and I'm just trying to hold them together. I clip them both on at the same time. They only go on in one direction. Take that, Harry Styles. All right, and then I want to take these wire ties off of our radiator fans. And you'll get an understanding now why I wanted those in the back, why I turned the fans so that I can run these straight out through this hole, just like this, which isn't particularly useful if I want to plug them in to the motherboard. But since I'm planning on plugging them into the NZXT wiring, I think I can hide that in the back. And this 760T case gives us a pretty decent amount of room for our cable management. That looks to be about, is that about an inch? You know what? knocking stuff over. Let's try that. I know I have a tape measure in here somewhere. There it is. Yeah, I think a 30-foot tape measure ought to be able to measure that. What's the depth on that? Looks to be about an inch and, not quite an inch and a quarter, maybe an inch and an eighth. You guys in every other country but America can just type inch and an eighth to millimeters if you want to know what that is. That's what I have to do when I read your stuff. I got to go the other way around. I'll tell you the problem with the standard system that we use here in America is it makes it really hard for people that were brought up on it to learn the metric system, and everybody says, oh, the metric system's all easy, it's based on tens. Yeah, converting Celsius to Fahrenheit is not easy. I know there's some rule about doubling and adding something, but it doesn't even get you an exact number. It kind of gets you in the ballpark, but I digress. All right, motherboard power is hooked up. Now I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what do I want to hook up next? I think maybe, let me ask the chat, what do you guys think I should do next? And now I have to wait for the responses. Does the Maximus Hero 9 have onboard Bluetooth and Wi-Fi? Well, it has onboard Wi-Fi. Does it have Bluetooth? I don't know, but you could just type that. Just type in Maximus 9 specs and just read it. I don't know why you're asking. Graphics card. Yeah, I really like to turn the system on using onboard video before I install the graphics card, just to make sure that everything we've done at that point is working properly. It makes it easier to diagnose if it doesn't turn on. So I don't want to install the graphics card. But other than that, what do you think? Hook up the fans? Wire the water pump? Yeah, that's a good idea too. Put in all RGBs. We don't have RGBs to hook up other than the RGBs that are built into the case and the pump. Send it to the customer. Yeah, that would kind of defeat the purpose, wouldn't it? All right, so if I want to hook up this rear fan, tell you what, you guys can't see. Let me come around. If we hook up this rear fan, that can go right down here on the bottom. And when we hook this fan up now, we will have to be aware that when we plug our video card in, that we ensure that we don't pinch the cable. Like I said, we're not using any of these connectors up here on the top. There's a white power connector up here. That's, I believe that's for a 1 amp fan, or up to 3 amps or something. Oh, no, I'm wrong. It says H amp right up here. It's a higher amperage output, and they only recommend, Asus only recommends using 1 amp or greater fans on that connector. I'm not aware of any fans that draw more than 1 amp, but maybe it's for fan splitters and things. I don't know. You guys can tell me in the comments why somebody would need up to 3 amps for fans. I don't understand that, but I'm sure it's there for a reason. All right, so I got the rear fan hooked up. We got the 2 front case fans to do. Let's get those hooked up. I never liked the cable, just between you and me, I never liked the cable management on any front case fans. I can get those words out. They just, there's absolutely no way I run these cables that I'm happy. They just look terrible. But it is what it is. Let's see, how do I want to run that? I could run it through this hole here. See, this is the bottom fan. That one can go here. These are 3-pin fans I'm plugging onto the 4-pin headers. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's all good. You see now, I can already see I'm not going to like that because I have to put that other drive tray back in, and when I do, that cable's going to get pinched. So the cable can't run through any of the wiring grommets. It's got to go in the front, and then it kind of gets it in the way of the cables that go onto the SATA power and data cable that's got to go on the hard drive. It's got to go right through where this piece is, unless I just leave that piece off. Yeah, we'll see. Cross that bridge when I get to it. That's all the cable management I was talking about. It's all just judgment and what looks best to you. And there's no sense worrying too much about that right now because we just want to make sure we get the system built correctly and that it works. Once we verified everything works, then we can think about how we want to cable manage. Looks like we've got just one other fan header right here, which is in a really good, that's a good spot. We're going to be using this one on the far left for the water pump. The one next to it is for a chassis fan. So this one could actually go up here if I want it to. So again, this is where you have these decisions to make regarding your cable management. It's like you go, well, what is going to be the cleanest looking? But I think if I don't know. Really on the fence about this because the video card's going to be right there. Do I want this big old tangle of cable? I could tangle it up here, I suppose. Yeah, I really don't want this cable to fall into the fan. It's got to be taut, tight, no slack. Yeah, that could still fall into the fan. Well, that's not too bad if I do it that way. I just don't know how I can secure that. But that looks real clean. See how I did that? I just made that up. Okay. Fans are hooked up. Now we got to do the fans on the liquid cooler, so let me get the cables for that. So I've got all the manuals and extra parts all in the motherboard box now, as I recommend you guys do. Let me get this out of my way. Set that over here. And I believe this is it. USB fans. That should be all I need. What's that? Oh, that's the, this thing keeps throwing me off every time I look at it. It's the Wi-Fi antenna. It's just like a solid piece of plastic, like a monolith. I'm used to an antenna looking like, you know, an antenna, an aerial. All right, so we've got a USB cable here. That's how you're going to communicate through the NZXT software to the water pump, is through the USB cable. And the rest is providing the power to the fans and to the pump pretty bizarre. Okay. Trying to walk around. We got so many cables you guys can't see on the camera with lights and cameras and, well, not cameras, there's the one camera, but it's cabled in such a way that I have to, there's only one way I can walk around. All right, let's see. All right, well, this is good. There's a connector right up here on the top. I just can't tell if it goes in towards me or away from me. It goes in away from me, okay. So that's the main connector. And then this power connector can go right onto the all-in-one header, which I'll put right there. Like I say, the all-in-one doesn't adjust the speed, obviously. You want that pump running at the same speed constantly. And then your fans on the other fan headers, Asus can control those and slow your fans down when your system's cooler and speed those fans up when your system is hotter. Keeps your system as quiet as possible. Also helps to keep the dust out. We've got our USB cable. That's going to plug in up here as well. Right here. And hopefully it'll be long enough that I can run it out the back so nobody has to see it. Bring it out there and through here. Right in through there. There's a pin missing. It only plugs in one way. And USB 2, USB 2. This is our front port audio. This is an RGB header. These white connectors are RGB headers. You see when it says ROG external, I don't know what this first set of pins is for, but the second set looks like USB 2. These are our front panel switches. I don't see any traditional other USB 2 headers. That's interesting, because normally these boards have at least 2 USB 2 headers. This one looks like it's only got 1, and I'm assuming that's it. I'll have to just verify that in the manual. But generally speaking, if the plug fits with a computer, you've got it in the right place. As I mentioned, this one has a pin missing. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we can take these cables and then run them out to the back to hide them. Once again, emphasizing why I ran the fans in the particular orientation that I did on the radiator and why I was really thinking about that. Because this is what I was thinking about. I think most people think about hooking it all up right here, but you've got a big case window here. It's going to look terrible. All right, let's get those back there. Now, if you look at these fan headers, you see you've got 4 of them here. And all of them contain 3 little pins inside, except for this first one. This one at the end is considered the last one, but I guess, depending on how you look at it, you could say that one's the first one and that one's the last one. But NZXT calls this one here the first, then it's second, third, and fourth. And you can have up to 4 fans. We're not using 4 fans on the radiator, just 2. And so they want you to use these first 2. But basically the reason they do that is this is the speed control sensor on the 4th pin. And so they're going to control all 4 fans based on the information coming from the first fan. So if you don't plug the first fan in here, then it can't properly adjust the fan speeds. So when you're hooking up 2 fans, you use connectors 1 and 2, and then leave the last 2 on the cable. Don't use those. unless you're using a push-pull configuration with 4 fans, which in my opinion is overkill, but that's what it's there for. It doesn't matter which of the 2 fans you plug in to which connector, as long as you use connectors 1 and 2. Doesn't matter if the fan on the left or the fan on the right is plugged in. Just make sure the fans are plugged in to connectors 1 and 2. Is that clear? And then there's this additional power connector, which I'm guessing must be used to power these fans, since the water block's hooked into the motherboard header. So we'll deal with that when we hook up our power cables. So with that, we can start hooking up our front port umbilicals. So we'll get those unwire tied here. And oh goody, we have another one of these SATA power connectors. See, we have 2 that are identical. And they're both for the fans, right? This is going to be for the front fans here. This controls the LEDs. And then the fans themselves, let's see, these are the connectors for something to plug into these. Why did Corsair do that? Oh, it drives me crazy when the people that put this stuff together don't untangle the cables. So that's permanently that way unless you cut the cable. Oh, I hate when they do that. Drives my OCD crazy. All right, so these 5 all go together. Since we're plugging the front fans into the motherboard, we don't need to use any of these. I'm trying to think why there's 4 of them. We've got 2 fans on the front. Well, I'll have to look at the manual and see what the other 2 are for. Where are they going? It must be so that you can add 2 more fans and have them all controlled with this fan button, which is like a high and medium and low. But the motherboard will control this for you automatically. There's no sense to, that's sort of an obsolete thing. I don't know why somebody would want to control their fans manually. And we've got our front port switches. So the USB 3 cable is pretty unique. It's easy to plug in. Let's see where it's going to go on this motherboard. Nowhere. Seriously? I don't see any USB 3 header, nor do I see any additional USB 2 headers. And I still have to hook up the USB 2 and the USB 3 up on the front. Let me check the motherboard box and see if there's an adapter in there. This is disappointing. Asus has usually been pretty generous with the USB ports, so I don't know what's going on. That's a sensor, SATA cable, M.2 support bracket, antenna, bridge, SATA cable, SATA cable. Really? Okay. Well, push comes to shove. says there is a USB 3.0 connector and I'm just not seeing it. Oh, it's sideways. Hold on, I'm not done looking at that manual yet. It's sideways. It's right here. This is it. So we're going to take that cable, run it in right through here. There we go. Kind of like the idea of putting it in sideways so it's not just sticking out like it normally does. This cable only goes in one way, and oftentimes they will click into position, but they don't always do. That's a little tricky to get that on. There it is. All right. I'm still a little concerned about this USB 2.0 situation. Yeah, look how nice and clean that looks. I like that. I mean, that's pretty good when I couldn't even find the header. That generally means the cable management's going to look good too. All right, I want to go back to that manual and look up my USB 2 situation. Why would they just give me one USB 2 port? I mean, what if you had a memory card reader and front port USBs, and how do you hook that up? Maximus USB 2.0 connectors. That only shows one. This connector is for USB 2.0 port. Connect the USB module cable to this connector and then install the module to the slot at the opening of the back. So they're showing a little USB bracket. They're not even acknowledging your case. Shame on Asus. Why would they do that? And what the other connector is next to the USB 2 header, the one I didn't recognize, that's a USB, not a USB, it's Firewire. It's a 1394, which nobody uses. So they gave me a 1394 instead of giving me a second USB 2. Well, this does create a bit of a pickle because we have to decide then if we want to use the USB ports on the case or we want to hook up the NZXT software. I'm not going to think too much about that right now. It's not really that important. There are 4 USB ports up here on the top. There's 2 USB 3s and 2 USB 2s. I really don't want to have to disable or not hook up the 2 USB 2s. I can't imagine why anybody would need 4 up in the front, especially when you've got 8 here on the back. You've got 4 USB 2s, 4 USB 3s, a USB 3.1, and another, this red USB port back here, which is probably the USB flashback for the BIOS. There's no shortage of USB ports on the back. What are people saying in the chat? Let's see. Anybody know anything in the chat? I mean, I'm going live, why not? NZXT sells a USB 2.0 splitter for situations like this. Yeah, I'm sure I could use a USB 2 splitter, but you know, when you spend $400 on a motherboard, you shouldn't need to have to buy any additional. Asus should have included that. Again, if Asus is considering, you know, in the manual to install a USB bracket, then where is the consideration for the front of the case? I'm sure Asus would say that's what the USB 3.0 is for. And this case is unique in that it has both USB 3 and USB 2 ports on the front of it. And when I was piecing the system together, I never even thought for a moment that I would only get one USB 2.0 port. That may be a sign of things coming, things changing, because I've always gotten 2. Always, right side by side. If you look at any of my past builds, the USB 2s are usually right down here, and 2's the exact number I need. Okay, well, I'm not going to go on about it. I'm not happy, but I will figure it out. So let's continue where we were. Let's hook up front port audio. That's another easy one to get installed here. And front port, let's see, these are our switches, and that can go down here, right? Is that gonna look good right there? Yeah. And then front port audio, that's USB. Here's our audio cable. And the audio cable, what I've been starting to do is running it down by the power cable, getting it as close to this corner of the motherboard. It's really a, I don't know why motherboard engineers, they all put it in the same place, and the case manufacturers haven't really come up with a good solution. Like, they should cut a hole right here so I can just run the cable in and connect it. Other times, if you have a long enough cable, you could run it down the side and try and hide it, but we would never reach where we've got to go. So I'm going to run it right in through here. Now, I see what I already, did I cross that over? See, this is the kind of cable management stuff you can be thinking about now. See how these kind of overlap? I want to change that around. I don't want that to overlap like that, so I'm going to unplug that. I'm going to bring it around. And that will make my cable management a little easier. That was just that little USB cable I was plugged in. Put that back on. It doesn't affect how the system works. It's just, I was going to have to do it at some point. I might as well just go ahead and do it now. Then our front audio, that'll go here. There's a pin missing, which is blocked on the connector, so it only goes on one way. And now we've got our front microphone and speakers hooked up, and now we can do our switches and LEDs. And I've got close-ups of this stuff on all my other build videos. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly put these on. They pretty much, at least with all the Asus and Gigabyte boards, all the boards I've seen, they all go on in the same order. So that's the hardware LED, there's the reset switch, there's the power switch, and power LED, which one's positive, which one's negative. Looks like the blue one is positive and the green one is negative. Sure would be nice if case manufacturers and motherboard manufacturers got together and said, just like with that front port audio connector, just plug one connector on and be done with it rather than going through this nonsense. This is fine in 1995, but in 2017, this just seems a little archaic. What they should do is then sell a breakout adapter for those freaks who want to do something different, you know, and customize a system or some strange board layout that's not the same as everybody else's. But at least for the majority, they could make life easier. And Asus does include that Q connector, but you know, I don't like it. As I explained in my other videos, I think Gigabyte's G connector is a much better design. And you see how easy that is. It's not a big deal. So I don't think, let's see, so we will have to hook up power, but we're not going to hook up the fans, so we can ignore all these. Power connector we can ignore for right now. The USB 2 connector, I've got no place for that to go. So what do I have left? I got to hook up power to the optical drive, the hard drive, and I think we can do our test fire, I think. So let's pull a SATA cable out here. Let's get this out of the way. Nope. Yes, that will do it. I don't think one cable is going to reach. Let's find out. Oh yeah, those connectors are all too close together. Do I have another one in here I can use? I think that one's the same. Well, that's an interesting CPU adapter for two 8-pin CPU power connectors. Or it can be used as an extension, I guess. Interesting. Floppy drive adapter, okay. EVGA. So we have a third one. I think these are all identical. This I found out as a power supply tester, which is worthless. These power supply testers are absolutely worthless. Well, this is the part where the cable management's going to suck, because it looks like I'm going to have to run 2 power cables instead of just 1, which means it's 1 more cable I have to manage. That's all right. We'll figure it out. So SATA cable goes there. And then what we can do is we can run this out through here, and we can plug 1 cable into the back of the hard drive, like so. And then these 2 leftover cables, you know, let me just leave those for now. If we just dedicate that. Well, you know what? I can hook front fans up. These break real easily too, so you want to be, the little edges will break off, so make sure you get it in the right direction. There we go. And that hooks up our front LEDs for these 2 fans. And we need another power cable for the the Blu-ray drive. And then because of the route it has to run, we should be able then to hook it onto the water pump power cable here. Sometimes in the bag of cables you'll get different SATA cables. Some may be shorter or have fewer connectors, but it looks like with this particular power supply they're identical. You just get 3 identical ones. So let's see if which way would I want to go? We're going to go up here to the optical drive. And yeah, you see how that cable's going to kind of stick out? So that'll be perfect for running it to this connector for the all-in-one cooler. Again, I can't emphasize enough that you put this on in the right direction and you don't force. Very easily broken. It'll still work, it just that when the sides break off, it won't hold the connector anymore, and it might just fall off. So that's my concern there. Boy, I sure wish that wasn't designed like that. You see, I have to fold the cable over. I'll have to take care of that in wire management. We can run that right down with the other one. See, I did that one backwards, starting with the device and then back to the power supply. No right or wrong way. Whatever you're most comfortable with is fine. And this has got to go down here on the bottom. I think I'm going to move this one over. Just for cable management purposes, I think that'll look better there, and that one will look better there. There we go. All right, and then I have to hook up the SATA data cable from the optical drive to port 1, which should be the bottom port, but I'll check the manual. We'll verify which one that is. Again, it doesn't really matter. Hooking onto the bottom port makes the most sense so that you have access to the top port. So I guess I really don't need to look at the manual because that's the way I'm going to hook it up anyway. It'll work in any of them. It's just the idea. You know, they shouldn't even number these things, honestly, because if they all work alike, if port 1 and port 2 and port 3 and port 4 and port 5 and port 6 all work alike, then all it's doing is driving people with OCD nuts like me who want to use them in order. But, you know, they make pills for that. All right, so I'm going to pull out the SATA cables. Now, this motherboard actually comes with quite a few. We have 2 here, 2 here. And 2 here. So we have 6, which is very generous. We only need 1, and I'm going to use the one with the right angle on it. And so we're going to plug that in right up here on the top. And then I can run it through this hole, bring it out to hide that cable as much as possible. Bring it out through here, bring it behind all these cables. Again, trying to hide it as much as possible. And then I think right in through there should bring us, nope, it's going to go lower. So once again, I want to bring it behind these cables, try and hide it as much as possible. And I'm going to just plug it right here into the very first bottom port, and that leaves us access then, or the customer access then, to plug into any of these additional ports. You know, if I plugged it into the top one, it'd be very hard to get underneath of it. So now we can do our first power on self-test. We are ready to see what happens. I am going to pause and take a break, and I'll get the keyboard and everything set up here. And we're going to take a short intermission and be right back. All right, sorry about that. Everything should be back up and running now. Didn't do anything I said I was going to do. I was going to get all this ready, but that's all right. You guys will know it's real and authentically live this way. So let's see. I'm going to need to use this monitor that I'm using to monitor. Using my monitor to monitor. Maybe that's why they call it a monitor. Let's get that moved over. And turn it around so you can see it. And this motherboard is going to be HDMI only on its built-in video. So let me go grab HDMI cable. Okay. Then I'm also going to need another power cable. And I need my keyboard wireless dongle, which I'll take off of the machine I'm using to stream right now. What do I need? A power cable. Power cable. All right, now we can do our power on self-test. I'll plug in the USB keyboard mouse right up here on the top. We'll plug in the HDMI cable into the monitor here. Somewhere under here I've got an HDMI plug that I never use. Yeah, that'll make my nephew smile. And we'll plug that in to the back of the motherboard. Right there. Let's get that up on an angle where you guys can see it. Hopefully without too much reflection of the light. And finally, the last thing we plug in is the power cable. All right. All right, here we go. Are we ready? This is it. Hold on, I gotta check one more thing. Well, that's not going to work. I was going to check and make sure I'm streaming okay, but I'm assuming everything's going out okay since I can't monitor it anymore. But let's go ahead and see what happens here. Make sure my power supply is flipped into the on position first. Well, I'm seeing red lights on the fans, which is good. I see the RAM is glowing red in there. You guys can see that. I'm looking on the monitor on the camera to see a reflection here. I want to see some video. Looks like we're getting something. And let me step around. What do we got? It says Asus Maximus 9 formula. We're at BIOS revision 0701, which is old. The DVD drive is actually plugged into SATA port 2. Remember I told you SATA port 1 should be on the bottom. That's something Asus does. I don't know why they do it, On Gigabyte boards, it would be on the bottom. It doesn't matter, it's gonna run fine. New CPU installed, please enter setup to configure your system. CPU fan speed error. We have to tell the BIOS that we're running a water pump, an all-in-one cooler, so that it doesn't need to monitor the CPU fan speed. And then it says press F1 to run setup. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shut it off for a moment. You'll see the RGB lighting right now is cycling through on the motherboard. You see how it's green, and then it's blue. Then NZXT is cycling through, well, it's just circling around in blue. So anyway, we're gonna change all that to red. We'll change this to red, and it'll just be black and red all the way across. The RAM doesn't change, the RAM is red, it'll stay red. So that's the idea behind the black and red. And these fans up front are gonna be red. And it is disturbing how much those look like swastikas. I realize that, people have mentioned it in the videos. I'm sure it's not intentional, and it doesn't really look that way. I was gonna say it doesn't look that way in person, but actually it does. Yeah, I think Asus, I think Corsair needs to sort of rethink, you know, it's because the light is shining this way and then the light is shining that way. And I'm sure it was to give the most amount of light. This is how engineers think. And I would like to see that not be so distracting. Like I said, I'm sure it's completely coincidental and there's no anti-Semitism involved. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure of it. Unless they're still mad about World War II. It's Japanese, right? No, I'm sure it's just a really sad oversight. I think they could have perhaps done a waterfall look with these lights all going down or all facing the same direction rather than pointing them each in a different direction. There's always got to be something that somebody's going to complain about. You will notice that even when the system is turned off, it's still cycling, and I believe that's all controlled through the Asus software, which we can deal with when we install the Windows software and then the Asus software. I want to update that BIOS right now, and I did download the latest BIOS for it and put it on a flash drive. Let's get that out of the way. It's real easy to do. We don't need to use the BIOS flashback feature. That's really if the system doesn't power on because it doesn't recognize your CPU, which is pretty unusual. I see that mostly with X99 boards. I really don't see that with socket 1150 or 1151 boards. You know, even if it doesn't recognize the CPU, those boards, in every case, in my experience, they still power up just fine. They just say, I don't recognize the CPU. On the X99 boards, they don't turn on at all. The fans will spin and just nothing happens. All right, so let's go into the BIOS. Let's grab this. You guys can see. Hello, BIOS. Where'd it go? Well, it's a good time to check our reset button. Does that work? Yep. Sometimes when you hit end on the keyboard, it takes me into the easy flash part of the BIOS. Not on this one. F1 to run setup. I hit F1. I got nothing. Do it again. I'll just see if it'll let me in. Just start hitting delete. See if we get into that UEFI BIOS. No. F1 to run setup. That should already be on the screen. I wonder if it doesn't like that flash drive I plugged in. I want to try moving the flash drive to a different port. Let's plug it in to one of the USB 3 ports instead. See if that makes any difference at all. May have nothing to do with it, but I can't understand why that's happening. very quiet. Still getting nothing. Of course, I didn't hook up the SATA cable to the hard drive either, but I'm not worried about that right now. I did just forget it. I'm hearing the hard drive spin up and it's occurring to me, I didn't plug that SATA cable in. I was just thinking of the M.2 going, I don't have any more cables to plug in. I forgot. That's all right. At this point, it doesn't matter. I got bigger fish to fry. Let's take that USB out and see if it'll let me in the BIOS now. F1 to run setup. Yeah, see that it doesn't like this. I've seen motherboards do that before. It's pretty unusual that a board this modern would have this problem. Let's plug it in up here. Let's see if that works any better. I'm going to go over here to Tool. There should be a BIOS updating wizard here. Yeah, Asus Easy Flash Utility. That's what I want. Well, I would say it just doesn't like this flash drive. It just locks up. So let me go get a different flash drive. This is disappointing. Again, I expect these kind of problems on a cheaper, lesser known brand name motherboard manufacturer. Don't expect that kind of incompatibility with Asus. But it is an old flash drive. In all fairness, that flash drive is probably 4 or 5 years old. It's a brand new motherboard. USB is supposed to be universal. It's supposed to just work. But it's not. So let me go back into my office here, and we really want something smaller than 16 gigs because we have to make sure it's formatted in FAT32 or the BIOS won't see it. Like if you have NTFS, which is basically required on drives larger than is it larger than 16 or 32? I can't remember. I just know 16 gigs or less is preferred. I'm just looking to see if I have a modern, is the problem. I want to use a modern flash drive, one that's fairly recent to ensure compatibility with the board. But at the same time, all of my modern ones are giant capacities. I think the Samsung one will work. Let me make sure that that's formatted in FAT32. Wow, that's 16 gigs. I thought it was just 8 gigs. But it's FAT32, that's fine. So let me just copy the BIOS file off of the computer and onto the flash drive. It just takes a moment. There we go. Usually this would have been done by now. That's a really strange incompatibility. Very strange. But I can complain about it all day. It isn't going to change anything. So this is, let me show you the flash drive I'm about to use. This is a really good deal on a flash drive, by the way. These Samsung. The only thing I don't like about it, there's no LED. But it's a metal case. And I guess it's just glued in there, so I suppose it'll eventually come out. But anyway, you can see as it gets used, it gets a little scuffed up here where the pins of the USB port scrape it. But this is a 16 gig, and I think these sell for like $8 or something, and this really got fast read speeds. The write speed's nothing to write home about, but it's not, I mean, I've seen worse, I'll put it to you that way, for more money. Stuff like from Kensington. Or Kingston, I mean, not Kensington, Kingston. All right, let's try this again. Poor Kensington's like, what do we do? Kingston. There we go. See, we let us into the BIOS that time. It just didn't like that flash drive. So back over to Tool, Easy Flash Utility didn't lock up on us. I just keep hitting enter. There's a BIOS update right there. Enter. You want to read it? Yes. You really want to update to version 0906, which is dated March 22nd, 2017. Yes. Just hitting enter and enter and enter. This used to be a dangerous process back in the 90s, maybe even the early 2000s, but it's pretty much not going to let you flash the wrong BIOS. Laptops are even easier because the laptop manufacturers pretty much automate the process right through Windows for the most part. So if you have a Dell or HP laptop and you want to update it, there's really no danger. Not the way people on the internet would make you believe, especially since the laptop has a battery. You obviously want to plug the laptop in, but the worst thing that can happen when you're updating a BIOS is that you have a power outage. And I haven't had a power outage here in quite some time, and it's very unlikely that, I mean, the odds of that happening, for this point, it would, you know, if a car crashed and hit a pole somewhere, power pole, or one of the distribution hubs, obviously that would affect. And you can always have a little UPS or uninterruptible power supply, which is nothing more than an external battery, as your surge protector, which will give you about 10 minutes of power in most cases. And that would enable you to, you know, relieve that anxiety. But I do this all the time. It's not a big deal. And a lot of people are of the school that you shouldn't update the BIOS unless you need it. I'm of the school that you update the BIOS so that you don't need it. It's about not having to solve a problem. So that's why I do it. And for most people, they probably won't notice a difference one way or the other. It depends how old your motherboard is, or actually how brand new. If it's a brand new board that just came out, like the Z270s haven't been out very long, or if you're doing an AMD Ryzen, you really want to make sure you get that latest BIOS build because they're working through all the bugs of new hardware and such. So that's really important. If you have your system, if your system's 3 or 4 years old and it's been running fine, probably just leave it alone. Unless you're just of that, you know, like if you brought it into my shop and there was a BIOS update on your 3 or 4 year old desktop or laptop, I would update it. But I'm also a professional technician, so I'm not intimidated by that. And I also know what it was like on the old days versus these days with regards to the likelihood of success. And the likelihood of success is well into the 99 percentile range. It's very unlikely you would fail unless, as I mentioned, you had a power outage without a battery backup. So I've talked more about that than the actual time it took to do this. BIOS is updating. Do not shut down or reset the system to prevent system boot up failure. So this is, you just let it go, just leave it alone. And you'll see the system is turning itself on and off and on. I'm not controlling that. And patience is very important when you do the BIOS update, especially if I were to do the BIOS flashback. That can take up to 10 minutes. It's really important that you find something to do so that you don't sit there and think, oh, it's been too long, I better turn it off and turn it back on, and then you just screw the whole thing up. So now, we've now got BIOS version 0906, that's the correct version. Now we can go in and we can tell the BIOS that we've got the water pump hooked up so we don't have those errors about the CPU fan. So here under monitor, we can monitor CPU temperature, that's fine. Motherboard temperature, yeah, that's all good. These external temps, so water in, water out, we're not using that. CPU fan speed says not available. All-in-one pump speed. We're going to say on the CPU fan speed, we want to ignore that. It's your high amperage fan speed there. We're not utilizing it. Q-fan configuration. Q-fan tuning. So I'm going to go ahead and let it calibrate these fans, and what the Asus software is going to do, you can see that, is it's going to go through each fan and it's going to figure out by reading the resistance on the 3-pin cable when the fan stops turning. And because each fan, well, these two fans are identical, but the fan in the back will be different. And you'll see these fans will shut off individually. I can already see this one slowing down. You can see the lights. Lights actually gotten dimmer. You'll see that fan goes completely off, and the BIOS says, okay, that's the electrical impulse or the signal I have to send to get that fan to turn off completely. Then it'll ramp it up as fast as it'll go to figure out what the maximum voltage is. And that way it can control each fan with precision, which is great. And you'll see what it's doing. It's trying to figure out how much voltage it has to feed it to get the lowest setting. And then it may get loud here in a moment as it ramps the speed up. You'll probably see the LEDs get brighter, I imagine. Although the LEDs should be powered by the power supply anyway. Well, it says it's good. And then these are the results, which don't mean anything to me, but the BIOS says got it. Good. And then, of course, you can tune, what's the lower limit of the fan, 200 RPM. Do you want the standard fan profile, the silent one, the turbo one? Do you want to control it manually? I think you've got to be something going on in your head if you want to control that manually. You should go back and buy a computer from the 90s if you really want to do that. Chassis fan configuration. And it's using the temperature source, right? So here you can say, what temperature do we want to monitor to control these fans? So pretty much we just keep it on auto, keep all of that set exactly as it is. I don't see any reason to change any of this. I am a little curious how far we could overclock this. There is an overclocking profile here. I might be getting a little ahead of myself on this though. Actually, I don't want one of the profiles. It's got an automated tool, which we can use. It's a lot easier and more accurate to use the software. The BIOS will let us do it, but the BIOS won't give us the granularity that the Asus software will. There's our SPD information with our RAM. And we want to make sure we got XMP turned on, extreme memory profile, which I think is in here somewhere. There's our effects, the onboard LED, which we can turn on or turn off. Again, we can control that more through the Asus software. Fast boot enabled, no post time delay, all that looks really good. There's really not much to change in here. Date and time we can set during Windows setup, so we don't have to do that in the BIOS. I'm not sure where XMP. That's not it. It's not under CPU, it'd be under RAM. Storage. Onboard devices. USB configuration, hard drive, smart information. Well, I haven't hooked the hard drive up to the data cable yet. Oh, this is a good time to check and make sure we can see our M.2 drive, which should be right on the main screen. No, it's not there. It's got to be in here somewhere. Is it on onboard devices? ×2 or ×4, I want to be ×4. All right, are you going to show me okay, boot option 1, flash drive. There's the Samsung SSD 960, it's showing it's in slot M1. And there's the flash drive again, there's the UEFI bootable and then non-UEFI, the Blu-ray drive, and then it still shows UEFI, the Samsung flash drive. I can just disable those. I mean, it's gonna disappear when I unplug the drive anyway. Look at that, it doesn't even give me disabled. Isn't that interesting? All right, well, we're good. Everything looks good here. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit escape. And we're gonna go over to exit and save changes. Now, ideally, I'm not gonna get the error message anymore about the CPU fan. It should come up and say that there's no bootable device. And then we can go ahead and hook the data cable up to the hard drive, install the video card and the power cable. Just waiting for this thing to come back on. It's thinking about it. It's probably trying to boot to that flash drive. I should have unplugged it. It should give up here after it tries and gives us something about a non-bootable device. Oh, it's in a boot loop. All right, let's turn that off. Let's take the flash drive out. Let's do it again. I don't expect to see it in a boot loop. I expect to see an error message. I don't suppose it matters much, other than that's what I'm used to seeing. Yeah, it goes right into the BIOS. That's normal. Okay, good. So let me go ahead and set everything back. Let me put my monitor back so I can see what's going on in chat. And let me do that right now. I'm going to unplug this. I don't want to work on this at all with any power plugged into it. Safety first. Let's get that switch powered off too. Done with my HDMI cable. So you can see when you watch these edited, when you watch my regular build videos, all this stuff is edited out, so you don't have to. To me, this would be painful to go through all of the, to show you me putting things away and putting things in their place. I got to get these flash drives back. And let me put the monitor back where it was so I can see what's going on. Working blind here. And keyboard and mouse, I'm going to need those too. All right, there you guys are. Hey, Brytech joined us. Hey, Brian, how are you? Hi from Qatar. Hi, Paul. XMP is in the easy mode. Okay, I'll have to look for that when I get back to it. Hardy's one said, guys, Carey can't see the chat right now because he's using the monitor. Yes, that is correct, Hardy's. I was not able to see anything until just now. Someone was asking me if I have any opinions on Fantex cases. They're nice cases. I wouldn't hesitate to use one. I haven't had any customers want one, but I've heard good things. All right. Stick that stuff over there. Let me get rid of this. I think we're ready to get our video card installed. Let me, I am going to forget to hook that data cable up to the hard drive, so let me do that now. So back here in the motherboard box, there it is. So we'll be using SATA ports 1 and 2 after all, which is good, because then that means the DVD drive would go preferably into port 2, which is exactly where I put it. And because it's on the lower slot or socket, that means that installing this one will be really easy, because all I'll have to do is plug it in right above, just like so, and then we'll bring it out. And then down into the back of the hard drive. Now, I will let you guys know that if you're building a computer for the very first time, some people have confusion when they install Windows when it offers you multiple places to install Windows. What you can do to avoid that confusion is don't hook up any storage drives until after you install Windows. That way, the only drive you'll have available is the M.2. It'll be the only place it can install, and it removes that option. It removes a decision you have to make. Those of you who are more technically capable, of course, you can go ahead and plug all your drives in now and then select the proper drive during the Windows 10 installation. It will prompt you and say, you should see the 4 terabyte drive and you should see the 1 terabyte NVMe drive. But there's no harm in just hooking up one drive, installing Windows, getting the system shut down, unplugged, hook your rest of your drives, your 2, 3, 4, whatever, hook those up and then turn it back on and then initialize those drives once you're in Windows. Now, personally, I would not buy this video card. This is the Founders Edition, right? So what the Founders Edition is sort of the purest version of the manufacturer's design. And then other manufacturers, you know, Asus has the Strix, and, you know, Gigabyte has theirs, and they have, and even EVGA has other versions of the, well, it doesn't matter if it's the 1080 or what the model is of the NVIDIA cards. They will ramp up the speeds, so they'll add more cooling or better cooling, and vary from what's called the reference design. The reference is something you compare it to, right? The manufacturer goes, this is rock solid, stable, and it's safe. Then the manufacturers of the cards will say, well, we can make it a little faster and still make it safe if we put better cooling on it, or we put you know, a slightly different, still sticking to the main design, but just adding little bells and whistles. And then that's where you get your ACX version, your FTW version, your OC version, or SC version, superclock. So when you go with the Founders Edition, it costs more money. I'm not exactly sure why it costs more money. I don't know that that's justifiable. I think the customer could have spent less to get a more powerful card. It just wouldn't be as pure. Some debate as to whether or not the Founders Editions are collectible. I've not seen that in my lifetime. I mean, I guess there's these old 3DFX Voodoo cards that could sell for a lot of money, but I don't know why anybody would want one, since most people wouldn't even know what it is. All right, we've got our instruction manual. We've got our driver disc with a metal case badge. Some sort of, what is this? Installation instructions. These are our Go Faster stickers. If you put these on your computer, I guess it goes faster. I mean, look how fast it's going. Power adapter cables. If you need these, you have the wrong power supply. I suggest you get a better power supply and not use those. That's my opinion. They give us 2 of them. And then we've got, oh, they must have been thinking of me. An HDMI to DVI connector adapter. And the GTX 1080i from EVGA. Yeah, look at that. It's all display port, HDMI, display port, display port. So 3 display ports and 1 HDMI. I've got this protective cover to get rid of. There's plastic across the top that we've got to remove. Good. It's got a back plate, that's nice. Here we've got the cover for the bridging connector if you're going to bridge 2 or more of these cards together in a series. We're not doing that on this build. Let me just set that down, and we'll set this down, and all this can go right over there. Okay. What am I missing? Am I missing anything? Brytech likes the card. If you guys don't know who Brytech is, he's got a channel, Brytech09, and he puts out a ton of videos and he'll show you how to remove viruses, show you how to do things within Windows. A lot of the common questions people have, and some of the stuff's pretty advanced. Most of it is easy enough for anybody to understand, and he's got that British accent that I can listen to all day long. What you, Brian? All right. So let's get this card installed. I'm gonna need my screwdriver. I like that there wasn't a lot of plastic to remove on that. That was refreshing. You guys have seen me in other videos sit there and peel like 8 or 9 plastic sheets off of these things. Yeah, I think that's it for... I was afraid it was gonna light up in green. It's not gonna match the black and red, but nothing I can do about that. That's the card he wanted, and that is the card he shall get. Now, typically when I put the video cards in, I have to remove the second 2 PCI covers, and I'm going to assume that's going to be the same here. Let's go ahead and take those out. There's one. Might need to remagnetize my screwdriver there. These are heavy screws though. Now when you put your video card in, you want to make sure you have the retention slot or retention lever in the open position. It's critically important that you do that. Always make sure you're working with the computer unplugged. You touch the case, make sure you're on the same electrical level so you're not going to dissipate any static by accident. Always hold the card by the edges, just like I'm showing you here. Avoid touching the connector. You can touch it. I just don't recommend you touch it, all right? Because if there's going to be an electrostatic discharge, you may not even feel it. It's like 7,000 to 9,000 volts for a human being to feel the static discharge, but only like, I don't know, 9 volts is all it takes potentially to damage the card. So it's got to be more than 9 because the system runs off 5 and 12. But the point is that you may not feel a static discharge. And that's, a lot of people make a bigger deal of static discharge than what it really is in reality. But if you just take reasonable steps like not working on carpeting, putting yourself on the same electrical level, and holding the card by the edges, holding all your parts by the edges, avoid touching, you know, if the bottom of this was exposed, you'd avoid touching any of the circuitry. And besides that, the soldering points are very sharp. They'll cut you. A lot of people think this goes in upside down, right? Because you think it would go in with the fan up, but that's not how video cards go in anymore, not for some time. Fan facing down, retention lever in the open position. We're going to line that up with the socket. Make sure that it's lined up correctly, and then we can just push, and we should hear it click, just like so. And then we can secure it back into position with the screws we just took out. That's good. Now I need power. Again, a very common mistake first-time builders make is they're so anxious they forget to hook power up to their video cards. And then the second thing they do regarding their video card is now you have 2 places on the back where you can plug your monitor. and they'll plug the monitor into the onboard video instead of to the discrete graphics card. And they go, oh, I'm not getting any video, fans are coming on. And it's just being too anxious. I like this design. I like what they did here. So we've got one, usually, oh, I see, never mind. Oh no, that is right. So they give us one 6-pin and one 8-pin connector here. Usually, with the Corsair power supplies, you get two 8-pin connectors. And this video card is going to require one 6-pin and one 8-pin. So that's a beautiful design. I really like that. That makes cable management just that much easier later on when we go to do that. So let's go ahead and plug these on. Obviously the 6-pin will go on to the 6-pin connector. And the 8-pin onto the 8-pin connector. Love it. That's an EVGA power supply and an EVGA video card. I guess that makes sense that they would keep that into consideration. Look how much cleaner that looks. I like it. See, if you ever had any doubt I'm a nerd, look how excited I get over stupid stuff like that. And notice now that the video card is in, and I want you to pay particular attention to this, I have no access now to SATA port 1 or 2, or for that matter, well, 3 and 4, just barely. I could still grab those. But I can't access this, and then the USB 3, see, if that was going to stick out vertically, it would get in the way of the video card, so it makes sense they put it in horizontally. But it does make it a bit of a challenge to do your video card and then hook these cables up afterwards. In most cases, it would just be a lot less struggle. If you learn the hard way and you've already got your video card installed, you're like, oh, it's going to be really hard to get to. Take your video card out. It takes 2 seconds to take your video card out. Plug your cables in and then put your card back in. It's not a big deal. Don't just struggle when you don't have to struggle. You don't have to be that stubborn about it. So let's run this out to the power supply. And we want connector for VGA. These are all SATA. So we only have 2 left up there on the top row, VGA 1 and VGA 2. Doesn't matter which one you use. I want to keep all my cables all close together so the cable management's going to look as clean as possible. That's the logic there. Since we started on this end, I'm going to try and keep all the cables towards this side. Normally, you know, if there was anything I didn't like about this power supply, this large motherboard connector should be closest to the motherboard tray. So that's a bit disappointing. You know, on the Corsair power supplies, this connector's moved to this side, but it's not a big deal. You know, they say all unhappiness is caused by comparison. So ignorance is bliss, I suppose. These PCI slot covers, we'll put those back in the motherboard box to give back to the customer. And that's it. I mean, we've built the computer. I can put the front cover back on. Let me go get that. In fact, we're done with these power supply cables. That will go back to the customer for future upgrades. And all this can go in the motherboard box, but I'll do that in a moment. These I'll put in there now. This is, you guys may have seen this guy in my videos. He is a Star Wars Death Trooper. I named him Earl. All right, keep an eye on stuff, Earl. It's actually Lego. Very simple to put that together. If you can build a computer, if you can build Lego, you can build a computer. All right, there's my front cover. Let's get this back on. That was easy. Make sure that's all flush. Looks good. There was a panel that went on top. We're keeping that panel off because we need airflow here. If you weren't going to put a radiator up here or fans, then you could put that cover back on. It's just for looks. And we're ready to do our final power on self-test and get Windows installed. So once again, I'm going to have to take my monitor here. And I got to turn it around so you can see it. It's going to get really confusing, isn't it? There's me and there and there and there and there and there and there. Anyway, that's what I'm looking at if you were curious. Fascinating, right? Who would have guessed? He's looking at YouTube. All right. I guess I'm going to need my HDMI cable again. That's what I get for putting stuff away like a OCD freak. I got to go get it again. But at least I know where it is. Pros and cons, pros and cons. All right. So I need my keyboard and mouse. Yoink. And we'll plug that in here again. HDMI cable, we're going to pick, I'm going to take one of these, well, there's only one, the HDMI plug. And I'm going to move that on top here onto the motherboard, so that way the customer is less likely to plug into that by mistake. All right, so HDMI here, into the video card, and then into the back of the monitor. I'm trying to tilt it so there's not much reflection. I'm assuming, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt that it's going to turn on and we're going to need Windows. So let me grab a Windows 10. There's my Windows 10 USB. This is the current version of Windows 10, build 1703. And we're going to plug that into one of the USB 3 ports back here. I need to hook power up. Power switch is in the off position. Give it power, flip it on. Hit the power button. I see fans turning. Radiator fans are turning. Everything looks happy. Let me take my keyboard and mouse and step around to see what you guys see. Ideally, this realizes it can only boot to the USB flash drive, so I shouldn't have to go into the BIOS and do anything. With the keyword being shouldn't. Yeah, it's already starting. I can see that's. All right, I'm just going to hit enter. Hello? Why is my keyboard not working? Enter. Well, I guess I'm using the mouse. Install now. And you'll see, setting up Windows 10 is really no different than setting up Windows 7 or Windows 8 that I've shown in previous videos. The customer is going to provide their own Windows 10 key, but they want me to go ahead and configure the computer. So anybody can install Windows 10 in a trial mode. A lot of people don't realize that right down here, it's kind of faded, it's really small font. It says, I don't have a product key. It's been there right in front of your face the whole time. You click it. It says, do you want Home or Pro? I honestly don't know which version this customer is going to use. So, at this point now, I would reach out to the customer and ask them. But I can redo this just to keep the video moving. I'm going to say Home. I don't think he needs Pro. Accept the license agreement. Oh, look, the keyboard's working. And we're going to do custom install. I always choose custom install on a fresh, clean install of Windows. And it's going to offer us 2 drives. It says drive 0, which is our 4 terabyte drive, or drive 1, which is our 1 terabyte drive. The 1 terabyte is the NVMe. That's the drive we want. So I've selected it and I click next. And now you can just pretty much go do something for 10 minutes while it goes through the process. It's actually pretty quick. If we had speakers hooked up with this latest version of Windows, Cortana will talk to us and walk us through the process. And maybe I can hook up a speaker and you guys can hear it. I've got a speaker over here somewhere. I've got to find my speaker cable. This is completely unnecessary, but it's something new. A lot of people aren't aware of it. So I'll just show you how that works. I think I've got that hooked up right. Everything looks good. Where are we at? We're at 31% of the install. This is happening all live in real time. Again, once Windows is installed, we can install the Asus software to do a more granular fan configuration where it auto-tunes the fans. We can do an auto-tuning overclock to find a stable overclock. We can load the NZXT cam software that can control that LED, not only the color, but if we want it to be static or what motion we want it to have. The LEDs on the RAM are just going to be like that forever. That's how they work. It is interesting that the green GeForce light here, we can't change that color. It does tie in nicely when the motherboard turns green. It's too many colors going on for me. So we're going to keep it a black and red configuration. I'll also have to install the driver disk that comes with the motherboard. If you don't have an optical drive, you can always go to the website for the motherboard manufacturer and download the drivers manually, or spend 20 bucks and buy an external DVD drive that plugs into the USB port and plug it in when you need it. That's what I recommend. What else? We'll put some antivirus on it. Usually Malwarebytes or MCSoft is what I use. I like a freeware utility called Unchecky that just unchecks unwanted offers. They get tied into free software downloads. Doesn't work with all of them, but it works with the popular ones. And I'm forgetting some things. I was turning drive indexing off, but since the search is working so well in Windows 10 and it doesn't seem to affect performance, I'll leave the indexing on. Download any updates, but because this is version 17.03, there aren't many updates to download. And what else? What else do I do? Install Chrome, install Adobe Reader DC, the free version. Make sure that the graphics card, I go to NVIDIA and download the latest version of the driver for the graphics card. Normally I would activate Windows, although with Windows 10 that happens automatically and we don't have a product key, so the customer can do that when they get it. So then once all that's done, I know the system works, then I'll do my cable management and clean these cables up. They don't really look terrible right now without any cable management. It's not terrible. So this should be a pretty easy cable management job. Does our fan control up here do anything since we didn't plug them in? Yeah, it's not working. Interesting. When I push that, oh no. Okay, so the reset, this is throwing me off. The reset button, you guys probably can't see it, is blinking on and off. That's the hard drive activity light on the reset button, which makes me want to press it. It's the last thing you want to do when you're installing Windows. I don't think I like that. Does our drawer open? It does. All right, that works. Try and think about everything you can test while you're waiting for Windows to install. For the most part, you just really want to leave it alone. We're already getting ready for our first restart here, and it should go ahead and boot to the M.2 drive now. Very quiet system, very quiet. I mean, if I lean in there, let me take my microphone off. I'm going to actually stick my microphone right in there. I face the microphone right at the fan and blowing air right into it. That's about more than you'd ever hear. So that's the microphone just outside of the system. That's how quiet that is. Nice, huh? All right. It's getting ready. How exciting. If that's anything like my wife, that means it'll be an hour and a half. guess it's rebooting. But you can see, you know, as it's all done live, there's no DOA parts. I very rarely get a DOA part. It's been a long, long time. I had a button on a power button on a Corsair case that was DOA, which was a weird thing. But as far as like motherboards, CPUs, video cards, power supplies, it's pretty rare to get a DOA part. I'm surprised it's not talking to me. Do I have it plugged in the right place? I don't even know. Anyway, United States. Well, it's making me a liar. On many systems, Cortana will actually read all this out to you on this new version of Windows. Is this the right keyboard layout? United States, yes. When I had a second keyboard layout, skip. And just enter, enter, enter. We can connect to a wireless network right now if we want to. No, I don't need to. So we'll just say, skip this for now. It's way down here in the corner. Skip this for now. I'm puzzled why I'm not getting audio though. I thought for sure Cortana would be talking to me. All right, at this point we need to put a name in for the user. I often just put the name user, right? Knowing how much Microsoft tracks things and they claim they don't collect that. I don't need a burglar or a thief to know my name if they already have my stuff. However, for this customer, let me just go get their first name. I think I know what it is, but I want to double check. Again, this was done through Mike Smith. It's Mike's customer. So I honestly haven't even spoken to the customer. I've only spoken to Mike. And then Mike then was the liaison between me and it's actually Mike's customer. So let me just double check my email here to see. And of course my phone's gonna ring. I'm gonna get that in a minute. I'm looking through emails. Yeah, okay, it is Matthew. I thought it was Matthew. Okay, good. All right, so username will be Matthew. I almost typed it in, but if you get it wrong, you have to go back and change it, and it's a hassle. I'd rather just do it right the first time. Remember, slow down, enjoy your build. We don't need a last name in there. Matthew's good enough. I'm going to skip the password. We don't need that. If you can make Cortana your personal assistant, I don't care. All of this stuff I turn off. Diagnostic is off. Ads are off. Speech recognition I'll leave on for this customer. Diagnostic data, I just turn all that off. And I'll do a video on where you can go into other settings in Windows to turn off where they put advertisements. I mean, they're putting ads now in Explorer, File Explorer, or Windows Explorer, which is, right now they're just advertising OneDrive, but I'm sure by this time next year it'll be ads for something else. Microsoft has proven themselves to be unscrupulous when it comes to that. And there's lock screen ads, you can turn those off, and there are a couple other ads, and there's buttons with configurations within Windows itself where you don't have to do any registry tweaks or anything like that. You just go in and turn those things off. And it doesn't turn it all off, but it does disable the most annoying ads right there built into Windows if you can find those buttons, and I'll show you where they are in a future video. And then of course there's third-party applications like Destroy Windows 10 Spying and things like that, which last I checked have not been updated for this latest version of Windows yet. But I do expect they will be at some point very soon. In fact, if you know of any software utilities that disable all the Windows 10 telemetry that works and is compatible with version 1703, please leave it in the comment section below the video. I would appreciate that. And then we're still finishing up here the Windows install process. Bingo. And there's Windows installed. So now we can get the drivers installed, like I said, the NZXT software, the NVIDIA software, the Samsung Magician software for our M.2 drive, the antivirus software, the Adobe Reader, Unchecky program. There's a browser add-on called Traffic Light from is it Bitdefender? I like to give that to my customers too. It just gives them a red or green light with regards to similar to how I used to like, I can't think of what it was called. You guys are probably shouting it out in the chat right now and I can't see it. Can't think of it. That's how much I use it now. I've completely lost track of what it's called. And I don't recommend it anymore. It's basically like Traffic Light. It gave you a Web of Trust. Yeah, Web of Trust. Which apparently it was Web of Deception, it turns out. They were transferring a lot of information they claimed they weren't. And instead of Web of Trust now, I'm recommending Traffic Light from Bitdefender. So it's a free browser add-on. All right, everything looks good here. I guess I can go ahead and put the drivers in. Why not? Let me go grab the driver disk. Now Asus does something on their driver disk that a lot of people find offensive, and that is they put Norton Internet Security listed as a driver instead of as a third-party add-on. And it's really offensive, and I've brought it up to Asus, and they said, okay, well, we'll look into that, and nothing has changed. So, well, I do recommend Asus. They're not a perfect company. I'm going to find something to complain about anyway, but I just find that really deceitful because there are other third-party utilities that are listed. Well, you'll see. Well, their speaker works. Run setup. Yes. It used to be you always wanted the latest drivers, you know, even as near as 3 years ago. Windows 10 does such a great job installing drivers now. There's almost no difference when it comes to the drivers for USB or the drivers for your sound card. And those drivers used to come out constantly updates for your network card drivers. For the most part, you can install everything that's on your motherboard driver disk and it's going to run just fine. You don't have to get the latest because in most cases now the latest is going to be the same as what's on the disk, except for the video card driver. But like your Intel chipset driver is probably going to be the same, your sound card driver, network card driver, it's probably all going to be the same version. They're just not updating them like they used to. So here it wants us to install Chrome. That'll be an older version of Chrome. That I would recommend you download using Internet Explorer or Edge. But let's go to driver. And it says special offers, right? Google Chrome. And I want to uncheck special offers. Then it shows Intel chipset, Realtek, Intel LAN, Intel Rapid Storage. Oh, look, Norton's not on there. I'm so glad I said it out loud because if I didn't say it, it'd be on there. So they have done something. They used to list Norton Internet Security as a driver instead of as a special offer. And it was so offensive because you should be able to just hit the driver checkbox and take all of these and have it install everything. The APRP, I think, is the Asus product registration. You know what? I'll leave it on for the customer. There is a Bluetooth driver, so I guess that answers the question earlier in the chat if this had Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. I know it had Wi-Fi, but yes, it has Bluetooth because otherwise we wouldn't be installing the driver. So we hit install and it's going to install all these drivers automatically for us. See, we've had autonomous drivers. Sorry. Autonomous drivers, cars, self-driving car. Never mind. And then they're just throwing advertising at us, and we're just going to wait. It says 20 minutes. There's no way that's going to take 20 minutes. So once again, the idea here, walk away, find something to do. Watching it's a bit like watching grass grow. We're getting an alert that a restart's required, but not yet. In fact, I'm going to turn this off because this was just a bad idea. It's annoying. And we'll just let that go. I can start cleaning up my mess while that's going on. Oh, I forgot there's a poster in here. I mean, your computer hardware buying wouldn't be complete without a poster that's supposed to look like a movie poster, right? See how they got all this small print down here, like you'd see on a, can you even see it? Yeah. Some poor tree died so you can have your poster. You know, I ordered a video card. I didn't order a poster. You think if I order a poster, it'll come with a video card? I might save that box and give it to the customer, but the rest of that can go in the trash. Spare parts can go in the motherboard box. Lots and lots of spare parts, which is good. It leaves lots of room for upgrading for the customer, lots of options for the customer. I'll get my my handcrafted by CareyHolzman badges, and I'll stick them in the box, and if the customer wants to put them on. A lot of controversy over my stickers. Some people don't like them. So what I'll do is I'll just give the customer the sticker, and if they want to put it on, they can put it on. Let me grab one. So those of you who haven't seen these before, this is a metal engraved badge that has my signature on it, and it's just got a sticky tape on the back, and you peel that off and stick it on the computer, and I'll just throw it in the box. And if the customer wants to put it on, they can. But again, it's not my customer; it's Mike Smith's customer, and they may not know who the heck I am, which is fine. Doesn't hurt my feelings one bit. Nobody knows who I am. I'll just be all alone and eat worms. Okay, I think the hard drive tray, I'm going to talk to the customer and see if the customer wants me to put this back in or leave it out. I also need to verify the proper version of Windows is being installed. I'm installing Windows 10 Home. Maybe they're going to use Pro. If that's the case, I'm going to start all over again and reinstall Windows. So I'm not going to get too far with this. I'm not going to go too crazy. And I'll do that tonight or tomorrow and do the cable management. And then I'll come back one more time on a final live broadcast, ideally sometime tomorrow afternoon. I'll try and make it around somewhere between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. Pacific time and give you the final look of all the cable management done as well as put the covers on it and get it back in the box. We'll catch all that on camera. And then it'll be off to the FedEx store probably, I don't know if I'll do that Saturday or if I'll wait till Monday. I'll think about it. I hate the idea of the computer just sitting without it being in transport. It's just more damage can come to it. I know if I go on Monday and ship it on Monday, it probably won't make any difference on when they receive it. If I go there on Saturday, they're probably still going to receive it at the same time. And there's less likely harm to come to it. The less time the shipper has it, the better, generally speaking. So how are we doing up here? 94% completed. See if I can take that USB flash drive out. Eject the flash drive, safe to remove. That's my Windows 10. I'm going to go put that away, actually, since we're still waiting for that to finish. So the reason I'm going to ask the customer about this tray is because if we put it back in here, just looking to see if it's going to block anything. Kind of looks better with it in there, doesn't it? Yeah, I think I'm going to put it back in because it just looks better. Not like it's changing the shipping weight or anything. So later on tonight I will, we're going to reboot. Yeah, let's reboot. Tonight and tomorrow I'll do the cable management. I'll put this back in. So when I come back tomorrow, you'll see this completely done. The NZXT cam software will be installed. I'll try the overclock. We'll see what kind of an overclock we can get out of it. It should be pretty good. I'll make sure the XMP memory profile's been turned on. And then I'll ask the customer if they want it left in the overclock mode or if they want it just you know, in regular operational mode. It would seem a shame to me to have this processor and that cooler and not overclock it at least a little bit. You know, I'd expect at least I'd say a 10% overclock minimum, 11%. I'd expect to see 15%. Anything over a 15% overclock would be very impressive. And I'm curious what the, and when I do the overclock, when I do the Asus automatic overclock tuning, I always check the little boxes for stabilization, like for video rendering. I think there's a box you check, and it just makes sure that the overclock is going to run in a super stable mode, which to me should be the only mode anybody would ever want. But what do I know? So it's not quite as aggressive as an overclock. It's much more, you know, it's putting the system stability first, which to me is what overclocking should be about. What good is it if it goes fast? It just crashes faster if it's not stable. All right, we're good here. Take the disk back out. Thank you very much. We have a case badge in here. Like I say, each manufacturer has their own case badges, and they want you to put these things on your system, so I guess your system can look like NASCAR, like a NASCAR. You know, if they wanted to give me the video card for free, I'll put their badge on. I'd rather they kept their badge and took 2 cents off the price of the hardware, said the guy who's including his own badge. Well, that's different though. I have a face. You know who I am. Asus doesn't have a face. EVGA doesn't have a face. They're just corporations. All right. I think we're good. Let me hook my monitor back up to the chat. Let's see what you guys are talking about here before we wrap things up. Let's turn this off. That's good. Give me my keyboard and mouse. Plug that back in here. All right. Well, there's your complete build done live and in real time with mistakes and misunderstandings all in there. And that's how it's done. That's how I do it. Can you show us doing cable management? I'm not going to show it because there's not a whole lot to see. It's me wire tying wires, cutting the wire ties because I don't like where they are, doing it again. And I've done that in previous videos already. I usually speed the video up because it's very, very boring to watch. And for the most part, without a cameraman, all you're going to see is my back because I'm going to be, you know, I can't do it like this. I need to be right in front of the cables. So you guys really can't see it. And as I mentioned, cable management is really unique to the person, what they think looks good, and to the hardware that you've selected, the length of cables and how many cables you're using on your power supply, your case and its design and how far the cables are running. For example, you may have a bigger cable management issue with a smaller mini ITX style case because you have a smaller area to work with. And then depending on how much hardware you have, if you have 4 hard drives, you're going to have a lot more cables that have to be managed. So you really just do your best to do what you think looks good, and nothing you do is permanent. You're just using these plastic cable ties, and if you don't like it, cut the cable tie away and reroute it again, and do that as many times as necessary until you think it looks good. There's no wrong way to cable manage. As long as your cables are plugged in, and you don't, a lot of people accidentally unplug their cables because they get them so tight when they cable manage them, they accidentally don't realize they've unplugged them, but they still look like they're plugged in. So that's why it's always important after you do your cable management and before you put your side panels on that you boot your machine up one last time and make sure everything still works. Make sure you can still see all your hard drives, your DVD drive if you've got one, anything that's plugged in. You know, check your power switch, reset switch, your headphone jack, your front USBs, make sure all those work. I will have to address that front USB 2.0 thing with the customer as well, so that'll also be addressed ideally in tomorrow's video. And let's see, what do we have going on in chat? Anything exciting? We've got, it looks like about 456 people watching right now. I appreciate you guys tuning in and checking out this live broadcast. If I was doing a 200R case without the liquid cooler, this would have gone a lot faster for sure. I don't see any way to really tell who's in chat except when people speak. I thought there might be a list of people. I don't see them. Brian's still in there? You still watching, Brian, or did Brian leave? I don't know. Brian, like I said, Brian's a fellow YouTuber like me, so he deals with a lot of the same frustrations. He certainly appreciates, oh yeah, Brian's still in there. Appreciates the effort it takes, since he does it himself. In fact, he does more than I do with regards to video editing and dealing with the trolls and things that can be very discouraging sometimes. And so it's nice to have somebody I can relate to, somebody who's, you know, doing a similar thing that I'm doing. And it's not competitive. It's just fun to be able to see eye to eye with somebody who does something similar to what you do. He obviously has a different approach. He's you know, things that are important to him with regards to the videos he makes and things that are important to me with regards to the videos that I make gives us a completely different set of types of videos that we make. And that's why I recommend his channel, because it's a good addition to mine for the things that I don't show. And like I said, he puts out videos much more And I've been trying to put a video out every day, but lately it's been getting difficult because my videos are running an hour and a half, you know. And so his videos much more compact, more to the point, and he's got that darn British accent. I can't compete with that. So everything you see me build is a customer order. I don't have $3,000 laying around to make you guys a free video. Doesn't work like that. Some people think that the money that's made from YouTube pays for stuff like this. Each view on a video gets about 1/4 of 1 penny. And then YouTube takes 55, I think they take 45% of that 1/4 of a penny as their income for the making the video available and having the platform, finding the advertiser. And then the creator gets 55% of that 1/4 penny. So if you have 1,000 views on a video, I think you make around $20. It's not a lot. So everything you see me do, that's why I say don't listen to these folks who make YouTube videos for a living, because they're just enthusiasts. And these enthusiasts don't have any liability or accountability. And there's no long-term sort of, that I've ever seen on the enthusiast videos of product reviews and things. They get the product, they have it a couple weeks, they evaluate it, they send it back. And that's fine for what they do, but I want you to understand that there is a difference between a technician who works, it's held liable and accountable to his customers for the work that he does, to a guy who's just getting products sent to him from manufacturers for free that he evaluates or she evaluates, and then says, oh yeah, I recommend this or I don't recommend it. No man is an island. You cannot be a really good computer technician and well, maybe you can, and make videos every single day. It's basically like 2 full-time jobs. You do one, you're going to get really, really good at the one you do the most, and then the other one's going to suffer. So if I had stopped, like if I said I'm not going to be a computer tech anymore, I want to do YouTube full-time, for about the first year I'll probably be okay, but then the technology will start to pass me by. And if I'm not in the trenches working with the customers and their frustrations, I will soon only be a parrot for the marketing material. I won't have any real experience to guide you with. And anybody can do that. Anybody can go to Wikipedia and read how to do, you know, what's the difference between an M.2 SATA and an M.2 NVMe, and then come back out and parrot that in your own words when you have no idea what you're talking about. So the experience gives me a different way of communicating it based on my experience with my customers and how I explain things to them. So everything you see on my YouTube channel is real work. It's real repairs, it's real upgrades, it's real system builds being paid for by customers that I have to support indefinitely, right? So they do have a warranty, but even after the warranty, who do you think they're going to call if they have a problem? Or who are they going to call if they're considering an upgrade to replace something? They want my opinion. So I will always be responsible for this. And I want you guys to keep that in mind, because when you're taking advice from a stranger on Reddit or a full-time YouTube personality, they don't have any of that accountability. And when we're talking about $3,000, do you want to just invest $3,000 of your hard-earned dollars into something some stranger on the internet told you? So it's your money. Feel free to do whatever you want to do with it. But I just want to make you aware of those differences and things to watch out for. And I think that's about going to wrap up the video, unless anybody has any quick questions in the chat. I'd be happy to address them. Yes, I have a new shepherd. He's not a puppy. He's about 2 to 3 years old. I got him from a rescue. And if you remember my channel from years ago, I had a dog named Jake, German Shepherd. And boy, this dog is the spitting image of Jake. He is incredibly similar in a lot of ways. But he's his own dog, you know. I'm not going to turn him into Jake. But his name is Jimmy. And he's only been with me now for about 2 weeks, so he still hasn't quite settled in yet. But he's been fantastic. We haven't had any accidents in the house. He knows how to use the doggy door, not biting anybody. So he's a sweet boy. Some motherboards have U.2 drives and M.2, not drives, but ports for the drives. As far as I know, only Intel makes a U.2 drive. They never really caught on. I don't really understand why anybody would want the U.2 drive, honestly. What do you call line? I guess you're talking about. So there's other competitors. Jay's 2 cents. I call him Jay-Z 2 cents. Seems like a good guy. Linus seems like a good guy. Linus just makes videos. He spends every day making videos. He doesn't get paid to fix people's computers. He doesn't take any liability or accountability for it. You know, anything he advises, and it's fine. And it's not to put him down. It's just that's the reality of it. That's the way he's selected to choose his career. He might have been a tech when he worked for NCIX, but that was years ago. So he's just a tech enthusiast. That's all. Linus is a tech enthusiast, and he's very good at what he does. But he's not a tech. There's a difference between a tech and a tech enthusiast, and that's not meant in a bad way. It's just that's what it is. And, you know, he's got people working for him full time. He's got several people working for him doing camera work, video editing, and he can crank videos out a lot faster. And then because he's got so many more videos, he's got more subscribers. And then he's considered an influencer. Manufacturers then reach out to him and go, hey, would you promote our products or review our product? And you got to make the money to pay for all that equipment. You got to pay for all those employees. And then it becomes a full-time job, and you have this responsibility now of getting your employees paid. My purpose here is just to help you guys. It's not about making any money. There's not much money to be made in the videos that I make. Not by making an hour-and-a-half video, you know, once every week and a half or 2 weeks. It's got to be every day, and it's got to be under 5 minutes, or preferably under 5 minutes, and something that doesn't cost much money to make. Something more like a video blog, a vlog. You know, guys like Casey Neistat would be a great example of that. You know, he's got a unique channel. Or you look at what PewDiePie is doing. You know, he's certainly not a tech. But to keep the videos relatively short, very easy to make, and even with the amount of money he makes, which is very interesting when you look at it. You look at how many people Linus employs, or Paul's Hardware. You look at how many people Paul over, was it Tech Syndicate, or am I thinking of Logan? You think about how many people they employ. And then you look at PewDiePie, who does everything himself just like I do. He doesn't have a cameraman, he doesn't have an editor, he does all of that himself. Keeps all that money, that's all mine. It's probably about control, it's probably about quality control, I'm guessing. But if anybody could afford a crew to make his life a little easier, it'd be PewDiePie. He doesn't have any crew at all. So I think that's pretty interesting. You should build that Zynos. I won't do the Zynos build live because there are people who have contributed financially to the parts. Those people need to see that video first. I also want to make sure there's no mistakes in it because the company, Zynos, will use that video as an instruction manual to people who buy their case. They'll refer them to the video. So the video's got to be shot in a much more professional manner. I've got to get all the lighting right. I've got to get any mistakes removed. It's got to look very professional. And again, the people who financed it need to be the ones who see it first, and it'll be available to everybody else after that. And then beyond that, you know, video builds may have to go to a pay model because everybody's using ad blockers. When you guys use those ad blockers, I don't even get that quarter of a penny from you watching it. And if they have enough people use them, and you know, ad blockers are being turned on by default in some browsers, it makes it discouraging to continue to make the thorough videos I like to make when it takes time away from my paying business that's not equitable to the time I'm spending making the YouTube videos. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I got so many projects I've got to complete right now. But it may have to be something like 25 cents a video, or I don't even know if I can do that, but if they'll let me charge that little. But even that would encourage more videos, more content, and the ability then to bring on a video editor. And that's really where most of the holdups on my videos come from, is the video editing portion. I've got videos that were shot. I've got a video I shot last April. It just hasn't gotten around to editing. Yeah, Patreon I won't use. The microphone, I'm using a wireless Sony. It's a UHF microphone. Most wireless microphones are VHF, and they just pick up static and really noisy. This is a professional microphone without going to like Sennheiser or one of the really big, you know, that's overkill for me. This is about a $500 microphone. It's the pack and the receiver. So the sending unit and the receiver on the, together it's $500. They run off 2 AA batteries, each one. I use rechargeable AA's. I can get about 8 hours. And I can go, well, if you saw the video on tech support, where I'm way out in this open park, I'm using this wireless mic, and I'm really, really far from the camera, and you can hear me just fine. This is one of the best investments I've made. Now, Sony has updated this, that's like black and yellow now, but it's still about $500 on Amazon. But I think it's worth every penny. The freedom I get with this microphone, I can walk, I could probably go down to the mailbox and you guys could hear me fine. It's crazy, the distance. And the clarity in it's just amazing. I was using a wired lapel mic and it kept tripping over it. Yeah, that's not good. Will videos be easier to make when you build your new PC? Well, the video should be faster. The editing should happen quicker, especially when you are going through taking 4 hours of video in HD and whittling it down to an hour and a half. It's very time consuming as the computer processes the cutscenes and transitions. $500 microphone sounds like high quality. No, a $500 microphone in this business would be considered mid-range. And when you look at Sennheiser, you look at some of the stuff, it's easy to spend $2-3 grand on a microphone, especially if you need multiple microphones. If you're, like if I was interviewing people or having guests, we'd need 2 microphones, we'd have to put it into a mixer. The microphones have to be on separate channels. You got to make sure that they're clear channels, that there's not any interference from the channels. The battery packs have to be charged up. And then you got to put probably the mixer to then a separate digital recorder, because if you just record on the camera, like I'm doing, about every 10 minutes the camera has to create a new file and there's a little click sound. So if you record to a separate, like Olympus or, I can't think of the other name of the company, real popular, it's a portable digital recorder, make sure those batteries are charged, make sure you got an empty memory card, and make your output of your mixer after you've balanced everything into that, and then you sync that up with your video. It's exceptionally time consuming, and it gets real expensive. Carey, can you tell us what is happening regarding the Windows 10 inaccessible boot device repair? Nothing has happened. The customer has said they would get back to me and have not gotten back to me, so it sits in pieces in my office. I've been reluctant to put it back together because I might just be taking it back apart again. So right now, I'm not bugging the customer and asking because I'm so busy, and the customer is not responding to the last emails I sent regarding what they wanted to do, other than they would get back to me. And so it sits. I've got other things to do, so I'm not worried about it. Brian says I have that radio voice, and I like Brian's accent. I did do a radio show for a while, and it was something I had a problem with at Newegg. Sometimes they wanted me to say things in a certain way, or I'm sorry, they wanted me to say certain things that just aren't natural for me to say. And I would immediately go to my radio show voice, you know, that we'll be right back. And they're like, no, you're doing a radio, you're on video, you don't need that. Jimmy Fallon does a great DJ thing where he's like, and we're back. It's hilarious. What version is that Windows 10? That's the latest version of Windows 10, the Creators Update version 1703. I didn't realize until someone pointed out to me that the versions are named after the month and year. It's pretty obvious when you think about it. But the previous version was it 1607? So that means it was released in July of 2016. 16, right? 1607. And then this is 1703, which was released in January, February, March, right? 3/17. Common sense. What's the speed internet where you are? About 60 megabytes a second. It's not great. So, all right. People are asking me, someone says NVIDIA or AMD. You watch my videos, you'll know the answer to that. Did you ever build with a Be Quiet case? I've not used any Be Quiet hardware, not a power supply or anything. So I have no experience with that. I'm sure they're fine. I've heard good things. All right, any final questions? We're going to wrap this up. We're going on 3 hours now. 3 hours of live video here, folks. And my view numbers are going down. We were up at 500, now we're at 398. So I might have just worn out my welcome. What do you think about Ryzen? Don't know yet. Haven't had any customers order one. Have you tried pfSense or FreeNAS? No, I don't have that kind of time. People have time where they have money. Very few people have both. If you have no money and a lot of time, playing with FreeNAS or any Linux-based application is wonderful. Linux is free if your time is worth nothing. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Just, that's what it is. Have any big movie stars asked you to build a computer for them? If they did, what'd I tell you? I haven't. Tony says, greetings from Germany. Love your videos. Thank you, Tony. Rafael says, hi from Spain. Somebody likes to type in all caps, so I'm going to ignore that. What's the best third-party driver install program that you use for unknown drivers? I use Snappy Driver Installer. Snappy Driver Installer. It's a big 12 gig download. It's a lifesaver. Did Coca-Cola pay you? Yeah, it's quite the opposite, I assure you. No, I have no sponsors on this channel. What do you think about custom water cooling loops? The problem with a custom water cooling loop is you really need to drain it every year to kill off all the bacteria and algae that grows. You know, I'm not a plumber, and you got to deal with potential leaks at every fitting you've got, and it's mostly more about show than it is about any effectiveness, in my opinion. With the all-in-one coolers that I use, like the Kraken X62 here, it's got, what I said, it had a 6-year warranty. It's sealed from the factory. You don't have any maintenance to worry about. And it's just not true of an open custom loop cooler. And I think that it's really about just showing off. It's not really about practicality, and it adds easily, you know, $1,000 to your build. You know, $700 to $1,000 over. You know, I can pull this cooler off. This computer will run without a cooler, and I've already demonstrated that. You guys that are so fixated on cooling, seriously, you need to stop it. As long as it's running within its operational range, you're not having a heating problem. It's not going to catch fire. It's not going to break anything. So this obsession with cooling is fascinating to me. You're like technical hypochondriacs. Oh, are we getting a battery low already? See that? Let me see. Could be. That battery's been going straight now. Oh yeah, it is low, isn't it? Yeah, that battery's been going for, well, since we started 3 hours ago. That's a good battery. All right, guys. Well, that tells me it's time to wrap it up. So thank you so much for joining me again today. I will see you guys tomorrow about the same time. I'll start about 1 o'clock. What is it, 4 o'clock now? That's a good time to wrap it up. Thanks everybody for joining me. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the video. You know, if we have turnouts like this, I guess I'll keep doing them live. Or I'll do more live, not all of them. I don't like the idea that I can't get any of the close-ups and really show you the types of detail I can in the edited videos. I don't mind little mistakes or misunderstandings being, you know, I'm a human being and it happens. but I am concerned that you're not really being able to fulfilly get the information I'm conveying to be that useful. Although I suppose for entertainment purposes it's fine. But maybe when school comes out, I can convince my nephew to be my camera operator in the summertime. And that's just a few weeks away, I think, before school is out. And if that's the case, I'll put him to work being my cameraman and being my video editor. And hopefully he'll take me up on that offer. We'll find out. So I'm looking forward to it. And in the meantime, I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Bye for now. Oh, and be sure and check out, if you're still looking for other videos, go to Brytech09, just type it in YouTube search, and check out his videos. They're all fantastic. Until I'm back, and then come back to me. See you later. Bye now.